Hi, I'm Matt Pitta, and this is Cape Wide News. This week's sponsors are M.L. Riley Construction in Bourne, Commercial Realty Advisors in Hyannis, and Taki's Pizza and Subs in West Yarmouth. On Friday, June 16th, the Steamship Authority fast ferry Ayano slammed into the Hyannis breakwater, prompting a massive rescue effort that included the Hyannis Fire Department, surrounding departments, and the Coast Guard. It took several hours to get dozens of people safely off that boat. Among those to first respond was Acting Hyannis Fire Chief Dean Melanson. We had a chance to talk with him in depth about that operation out on the Hyannis breakwater on Friday, June 16th. Late on the night of June 16th, the Steamship Authority fast ferry Ayano went aground hard on top of literally the Hyannis breakwater. We're here actually on the Hyannis fireboat that was the first boat to respond out there with the Acting Hyannis Fire Chief, Dean Melanson. Chief, thanks for letting us come down here today, several days after the incident, as all the agencies are kind of taking a look at what happened and going back as to how it all came together. And we wanted to spend some time with you here today, and we're actually on the boat that responded first out there in what could have been a much more dangerous situation, and the results could have been a whole lot worse. But you guys were there first, and we want to spend some time with you to find out, taking us moment to moment of what happened. And then after we do that, we're going to talk about how the training really prepared you for what happened out there on that Friday night. So if you would, start out with the first call, Chief, and take us through it.
So our dispatch center heard on the maritime frequency, heard the INO declare their mayday that they'd struck the rocks on the Hyannis Port breakwater. So we have a standard response package of this boat, and then we have a small whaler that responds out. And it's really just meant to work on the interior of the breakwater in more calm waters. And so that's the standard package, along with getting somebody down to the Hyannis Port Yacht Club area to get an eye on what's going on. So we recalled all off-duty firefighters, and I was the first one to get down to the breakwater on land and actually get a visual of it. And the visual wasn't that good. Obviously, it's night. He's about a mile away from me. You've got a high wind situation where we were, and then you've got the water breaking over the breakwater. That didn't really give us a good visual indication of what we had. I was able to locate the vessel for our fireboat, and they got on scene pretty quickly. They went to the outside initially, and we're trying to do a scene assessment. What do we have? What's the stability? How are we going to get on board? The officers on board the fireboat were talking with the captain of the INO, so we had a sense that we had 6 passengers at that point in time that had been identified that were injured, and so we're trying to come up with a plan as to how we're going to get our folks on board and do a better assessment of the situation. And on the outside, the stern of the vessel, the INO, was taking water over the stern just due to wave action and such, and that wasn't going to lend itself for us to get on board. So the fireboat repositioned to the interior of the breakwater, and they actually then they were able to assess that this wasn't against the breakwater, but it was actually well up on top. And so one of our members on board, Captain Rex, he's also a rescue swimmer and diver. He actually just decided to jump off the fireboat, swim into the breakwater, and go ahead and get up on the breakwater. And then with communications with their crew, they have what's called a Jacob's sling, and they were able to actually lift him up on board the vessel. And that's when we started to get better information and make an assessment as to what was going on.
So at that point, you realize that it's not just, as you said, resting against the jetty, but it's up on top of it. So then you have to start deciding what do you call in in terms of other resources?
Correct.
What happens at that point?
So, we had started originally while I was still en route. I asked for the Centerville-Osterville rescue boat, and they responded, but then when they came out and got offshore, it was way too rough for their boat, so they were forced back into port. So we had requested Coast Guard assets, and were assured pretty early on that they were going to have 3 larger boats coming. We got our harbor master to respond, and the Barnstable Police responded with their vessels, and that took a little bit of time to put together. So then we did the assessment, and we got a better handle on what we had for patients. We got a better handle on the stability of the vessel, which, at this point we're still coming up on low tide. So the INO was bouncing around a little bit there as well. And we decided that the best course of initial action would be to go ahead and fly some of these patients off, and that would relieve us of that burden, and everything else seemed stable enough that we could keep the folks on board and give us a chance to take a breath and come up with a better plan. And so chief officers from Centerville, Osterville, the Chief Wynn and Deputy Chief Eldridge responded down to my command post, as well as Chief Simeon from Yarmouth Fire. So we built up a command post. Chief McDonald was there from Barnstable Police, and then Commander Girardi and his staff arrived from the Coast Guard. And that allowed us a lot of different communication routes, a lot of different skill sets available. We got some folks from the Steamship Authority there, and we really did a detailed assessment of the ship and the situation. We got vessels on both sides interrogating the exterior situation, and we took 2 coasties and we ferried them out from the Hyannisport Yacht Club dock out and got them on board the vessel to do an interior interrogation of the ship as well. And so we formulated a plan that we were going to fly. Now we were up to a total of 6 patients, so we were in the process of flying them. We needed to determine a path off, and so what we did was we determined that we had 2 paths to get folks off. One was that we would lash some fire department ladders to the port side of the vessel, and that would give us a good path down to a clean area on the breakwater itself. And then we would nose in this fireboat here, use it as a temporary landing, if you will, assist the folks down onto the fireboat, and then you bring in the various harbor master boats and the Coast Guard boats. So we had a Coast Guard 42, our harbor master's boat, 2 police boats, and the Harwich harbor master's boat at that time. And we set up a little ferry service from the fireboat off to the Hyannisport dock. And so as we were doing that, we learned a few more things. We were able to actually get a total of 15 folks between the injured and uninjured. We were able to get 15 folks airlifted off the vessel, brought to the airport. We set up a ambulance response group there to take them to the hospital, and we utilized one of the buses that the airport has to transport the uninjured back to the ferry.
It was blowing pretty good at that point.
Yes, it was.
So what were the challenges that were being faced? You had the helo overhead. You guys are down in the water monitoring what's happening. So as that begins, as that process gets underway, when you start lifting people, what kind of danger zone are you in at that point? I mean, what's the level of difficulty at that point?
Well, the level of difficulty for the pilot, I think, they're highly skilled. So I think they would tell you that this was reasonable for them. I look at it with a 16 to 20 mile an hour wind. Yeah. He's got to come down close to a vessel at night. The vessel's bobbing a little bit. I'd be concerned, but they made it look just so easy, like it was something they did every day. And clearly their skill level and training showed, because he was able to quickly and efficiently. We did a lift of 3 patients. Then we did a lift of 2 because our 3rd patient decided that they didn't want to be seen. And then he came back and did a lift of 10 in one shot that ended up being 8 people who did not need medical care and 2 people that did. And our concern there was the only place that the helicopter could come in affected the boats, and his rotor wash was significant, coupled with the wind and everything else. So we had to call off the boats while the helo was in, and then go ahead and back to the boat operation once he left.
One thing you said to me a little bit earlier today was, in a way, we lucked out that the boat was actually on top of the jetty and not against it, because that gave the boat some stability.
Absolutely. We were on a fixed pier, so that 4-foot wave action wasn't bobbing the boat around as much as it would have had it been at anchor somewhere else. And then as the tide came down, and we basically hit low tide at midnight, so as we got to midnight, the stern of the vessel, for all intent and purposes, seemed to have touched bottom, because we don't have a lot of draft down there anyway. So that really stabilized the vessel. And once we learned that from our crews on board, we had been planning to try to set up a transfer at first light for safety, because we get a lot of people who aren't used to coming down anything this crazy. But once we realized that first light was going to be approaching high tide and we'd be very unstable again, we moved our timetable forward and went for that time frame right there, so we could take advantage of the stability of the vessel.
Well, that's interesting. So there was, as reporters were kind of standing away from you folks over at the Hyannisport Yacht Club, and we were listening into some of the transmissions, it did seem at one point that one option may have been, okay, let's wait till we have some daylight out here to see what's going on. So that was something that was looked at, but then the tide was going to work against you at that point.
And by then, the other issue that we had to do is disregard any of the injured folks. We had to actually triage the uninjured folks. You know, it's one thing to take a 20-year-old group of track stars down over a ladder and ask them to scramble down the side of a breakwater under reasonably adverse conditions. What if we'd have had a couple infants or 2-year-olds or someone in a walker, some 90-year-olds? So we triaged all of the people on board and said, you know, this group of individuals would be best served by leaving the boat via air, so that all they have to do is step into a basket and then come up, and they're not expected to do an arduous climb or anything like that, because the climb down was about 14 feet.
So it wasn't exactly an easy climb, plus it's windy out, it's dark, and you're in the middle, you know, in the bay.
And some folks are afraid of height. It's something you may have never done before. So we had enough staff on scene to be able to assist everybody down the ladder. By bringing the fireboat into the position that we did, we were able to light up that whole scene using the fireboat and the IANO's lighting to be able to do that. And the nice part was we weren't under a rush, because the IANO was stable, they still had power, they still had all of their facilities. So we could take this in a calm and controlled manner. And you know, once we learned all of those things, we were able to formulate a plan. Commander Girardi relayed that to the sector command in Coast Guard headquarters, and they were kind of planning for us to do it at first light so that it would be safer. So we had to, have a good discussion, which we did, and we convinced them that, local conditions should be dictate a move right now instead of waiting till first light and high tide. And so they agreed and, authorized us to go ahead.
We're with Acting Chief Dean Melanson here, and we're on 808, which is the Hyannis Fireboat down here at the Hyannis Harbor, and this was one of the first boats, or the first boat, that responded. Now, Chief, we also wanted to talk to you about the training aspect of this, because you folks have literally trained for this situation or situations like this. So take us through the training part of this that allowed you to be able to pull this off.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but a long time ago we actually did a disaster drill on board the Eagle where we did many of these things. We brought the older fireboat out, we got alongside, we transferred firefighters on board, we did some firefighting drills, we did some casualty drills. The Coast Guard came in and actually helo lifted a few folks off. And we've drilled with the Coast Guard on various other topics. We have a maritime response group. We're working on them with them right now. We've worked with the Steamship Authority. The firefighters come down, do tours, get familiar with the vessels and such. And then the firefighters, we have dedicated coxswains for this boat. So it's not every firefighter that's going to go ahead and operate it, because it's a very special skill set. So we've been working on that and making sure that they're well trained. We've got rescue swimmers who are also rescue divers, and we deployed those folks. Centerville Osterville has a group, and they came in and assisted us so that we had rescue swimmers on the fireboat, so that should any of these passengers fall in the water, or anyone fall in the water for that matter, we were ready to deploy rescue swimmers to retrieve them from the water. We had set up some safety boats. So with a variety of different agencies, from the police department to our local harbor master, the Coast Guard, the Steamship Authority, we've done training over the years. Everybody knows each other. We had common frequencies that we could use. So even the harbor master from Harwich was able to come up on the Hyannis fire frequency, and we were able to communicate easily and just come up with the plan.
Having watched it again just from where the reporters were standing, it just seemed that it was very calm. The operation itself was calm and orderly. I saw you coming and going several times in front of the Hyannisport Yacht Club, and as you said, Chief McDonald as well. So in that situation, does the training basically help keep you in that kind of low-key composition? You got to get this job done.
Absolutely. You have to be able to engage the brain, set emotion aside for the moment, and start thinking. And you have to be thinking. And we did this in the command post. What do we need? What are our needs right now? Where do we think we're going to be in a half hour, an hour, 2 hours down the road? What expectations are we going to have for additional help, equipment? Because you want to pre-position that. And you saw how tightly packed the street was. A lot of that was labor. And a lot of that was the equipment that's held on those trucks. So like for the rescue swimmers, we brought up rescue ropes. The divers were all set up with their dive gear, etc. We brought up more medical gear, Stokes baskets, anticipating that we might have to take some folks who couldn't ambulate down off the breakwater.
And Chief, finally, I know that in any operation you like to do kind of a look back, and I'm sure that you've either started that or done it already. I'm sure there are lessons you can learn because this was real time, not just training. Is there anything that you folks have learned that if there's another situation you might be able to do something a little bit differently, or did you learn some new techniques? What did you learn out there?
Well, we learned, to be not locked into one thought process or course of action, be very flexible, interrogate the situation and make sure that you know what's going on and then double check that. Make sure you understand whether this is, for everyone out there it was emergent, but for us we were stable so we could slow the operation down. And I know probably some folks wanted to get off quicker than maybe they did, but we wanted to make sure that we did it correctly and efficiently. And what I'm just so pleased about is the fact that we had 57 folks on board that vessel. We left 2 crew members on board as part of the plan and removed 55, and no one was injured. No rescuers, no passengers, no one received any other injuries than what we started with. And under those adverse conditions, I'm just so proud of everybody that functioned out there that night.
A lot of people are happy that you were there, Chief, and all of the men and women part of this. So congratulations, and everyone thanks you for your effort out there.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hi, I'm Matt Pitta, and this is Cape Wide News. This week's sponsors are M.L. Riley Construction in Bourne, Commercial Realty Advisors in Hyannis, and Takis Pizza and Subs in West Yarmouth.